Hi, I'm Dan. Before my journey, I was a carpenter, and then I got into joinery later on. Pretty fit, healthy, active individual, working 40, 50 hours a week. Had a good lifestyle, didn't participate in anything that I shouldn't. And yeah, I felt okay. There was no medical problems, I don't think, to be honest, prior to my vaccines. And yeah, health was fine.
And life was good.
Yeah, life was
Yeah.
was fine. There was no stress, no anxiety. I had a full-time job. I had my own flat. Yeah, there was no worries in the world.
Okay. And so, what vaccine did you actually have, and when did you receive it?
I We had the choice in Alderney, so we either, because of my age bracket,
Hmm.
you could either get flown to Guernsey to have, I think it was Pfizer,
Okay.
or you could stay in Alderney and you can have AstraZeneca. And I had two shots of AstraZeneca.
Okay. Okay. And so was that before they put the warning out? Like, because there was a time when everyone could have the AstraZeneca, wasn't there? And then I think they changed
Yeah,
it partway through. So that was
I
before they said
Yeah, I think I don't, to be honest, really understand how it all sort of came around. But I think most of the people on Ireland, I think, did choose AstraZeneca.
that. Okay.
You did have a choice in whether it wasn't, sorry, you didn't have a sort of a legal obligation whether or not if you was over 30 to have the Pfizer, or if you was
Mhm.
under 30 you had to have the AstraZeneca. I think it was just down to your own preference.
Personal choice, yeah. And so what were your thoughts and feelings around the vaccine at that time? How did you feel about it all?
I'm not gonna lie, there was nothing in my head that had rung bells. I had no
Hmm.
one that had come up to me and said, just be careful or do your own research or
Hmm.
and I was very naive to vaccines before this, very, very naive, because I always went by my doctor's advice.
Mm.
And I always thought that my doctor always knew what was best for me and best for the situation. And in Alderney, especially, we've got a very tight population,
Mhm.
and we've got an older population as well. And I felt that if I didn't get the vaccine and if something was to have happened, that I would feel partially responsible.
Mm.
I felt that there was a lot of fear mongering on it, and obviously because of being such a tight knit community, for people that didn't actually take the vaccine, they actually got quite a lot of bad negative feedback.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was really, even though people weren't forced to, it was very heavily encouraged. And yeah,
Oh yeah,
as you say, it was those sort of reasons of not just for yourself. It was really about the expression was, you don't do it just for you, you're protecting other people. That was kind of the angle. So I can
yeah.
understand, especially in a tight community, and we've sort of spoken about the Channel Islands generally and how they're a little bit different. Maybe we'll talk about that after. So when did you first notice that there's something wasn't quite right?
So, and I'd be completely honest, Danny, nothing even rung alarm bells. I felt with my first injection, I was incredibly tired, um, just very sort of fatigued all the time. And I was a builder at the time, so I was up and down scaffolding all day,
Mm.
and I noticed a dramatic deterioration in my health. Basically, I was getting very tired quite easily, but I never associated it with the vaccine. And then I had obviously the second dose. Around 4 months after that, my lower back exploded, and I slipped a disc, quite a severe slip of a disc, L5S1, and that then turned my left leg numb. And that was just simply just by standing up.
Okay.
And when I saw the neurosurgeon, I got referred to Manchester, and he said, I can't believe how bad this rupture is." He said, "What was you doing?" And I said, "I just stood up." Um, and for myself, I still didn't get alarm bells then, but now looking back at it, I had pre-ops done for the surgery, and they had to hold my surgery down for 3 days because they'd found a significant heart murmur, which I'd never previously had.
Okay.
I'd had previous surgeries, etc. There was no problems with my heart, and this time they'd actually had to delay the operation because there was a significant problem with my heart. I signed the relevant paperwork to proceed with the surgery, knowing full well that I had a risk to my heart. And lucky enough, it went ahead. But yeah, that was the first one, and then over that, I greatly improved with my spine surgery. I got back into work, and I was fine. I'd left Alderney to promote my career in joinery and join a firm in Guernsey, and that was then when I noticed I was getting very, very tired, getting very, very sleepy. My partner was noticing after work I was just going straight to sleep. And then on 15th of June 2023, I started collapsing at work.
Okay, so that's when things really started to escalate. And is that when you sort
Yeah.
of went to seek out help from the medical sort of teams in Guernsey? Is that what's happened? So talk me through what happened then. You started collapsing at work, and then where did you go from there?
So I started collapsing at work. I got referred to my doctor, saw my doctor, and they put it down as sciatic pain on my sick note, and they took me off work for 2 weeks. They done an MRI of my back, and they said, "No, you're fine. There is nothing wrong." Within the next 3 weeks following that seizure, there was more seizures. I was losing my eyesight, complete and utter brain fog. I was losing consciousness, severe ringing in my ears, complete left side weakness. I couldn't use my left hand or my leg. Couldn't walk.
Almost like presenting like a stroke symptoms.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Sorry, carry on.
Um, Yeah, and that's what I do believe that had happened because it was speech, left side weakness. It was
Mm.
everything. And I was in and out of hospital, Danny, because no one knew what was happening. And I just kept getting discharged, telling me it was either health anxiety or that I got it from TikTok, a social media platform, or that I was just trying to act cool. And that was my diagnosis is from the A&E, and they were £250 a visit.
So that's going to put you off even trying to attempt to go and get any help, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so what did they mean about, so did you go to them saying that could there be a link to the vaccine at that point? Had it crossed your mind?
No, I'll be
No.
completely honest with you. Still
Oh,
hadn't. Obviously,
okay.
having previous spine surgery, I thought that maybe that could be linked. But that wasn't even put into the equation. It was just that you've gone mad. That was the diagnosis that I was given. There was no explanation at all except that it was just a mental health problem, which I knew I hadn't suffered from because I was perfectly happy.
Yeah. Okay. And so how did it progress from that? Did other symptoms start to present?
Yeah, for myself especially, I was put on quite a large amount of medication, opioid medication, gabapentin, amitriptyline, even epilepsy medication. But I've never been tested for epilepsy, and that's with 2,700 seizures now in 2 and a bit years. Because it's too expensive, is what the HSC have told me to test me. So,
Wow.
um, but yeah, symptoms waxed and waved very much so. So a lot of head pressure.
Hmm.
I also inherited a motor and vocal tic disorder.
Hmm.
The memory side of things was I couldn't even recognize my partner. I couldn't talk, so we had to speak on an app, speech assist app on our phone to communicate because I just couldn't say the words that were there. I could see them, but I just couldn't say them.
My goodness.
It was incredibly lonely as well for the situation, to be honest, because even at that point, I still didn't know. It took me a few months to then, through research, find out what was going on. But even at that point, when you've got every avenue just being closed, every door being closed, and you're being told that it's a mental health condition that you know it isn't,
Yeah.
it's very infuriating, very lonely,
Yeah. I can
and it's a
imagine.
horrible place to be.
And do you think, Dan, that there's a lot of people probably who are still in that cycle of not understanding what's kind of going on with them? Do you think that's possible? That there's a lot of people who haven't been able to connect the dots for whatever reason, the information hasn't filtered down to them? You think that's the case?
Yeah, yeah. Is for when I was looking 2 years ago, there was a lot less information, obviously, than there is now.
Hmm.
Um, but for myself, because obviously I'm displaying, and it was 56 symptoms over 3 weeks, you fit into so many categories:
Mm.
Parkinson's, MS, transverse myelitis, ALS, MLS. You could be, you don't know.
Mm.
So for myself, it was looking down avenues and talking to people with the same symptoms as myself.
Mm.
Um, and every avenue I was going down, it was leading me to COVID vaccine injury.
Yeah. Okay. And so when that thought started to cross your mind that actually all of these symptoms, I mean, that's a huge amount of symptoms to start, sort of flaring up all at one time. And we will, in the vaccine injury, we look at like there's multi-system issues going on. So it's like one thing will flare and then something else will flare. And, that's why one solution doesn't work for everybody because everything's so different. But you obviously had a lot going on. So where did you go from there? Did you go back into the hospital at any point or your GP and say, I actually think there's a link to the vaccine? Talk me through what happened there.
So once I'd learned that it was a vaccine issue, um, I was before this diagnosed with functional neurological disorder,
Mhm.
and that was in September of 2023. So within about 8 weeks. And because of that diagnosis, it almost stopped every investigation or um, any interest from any doctor, so to speak, because they'd never heard of it. So when you've got that diagnosis there, you're almost shut off before you've even walked into the room. So even trying to engage with the doctor and say that it's COVID vaccine injury is it's not possible. I've done it a few times and I've said I do believe that my injuries are down to the COVID vaccine, and doctors have said that's entirely impossible. They're very effective, and your symptoms do not display as myocarditis. And I said, but is that the only symptom? And they said, but that is the only one there. And most of the time, I get marched out the door, or a very blank look stared at me, even for help to fill out my yellow card, because I knew that obviously I had a vaccine injury by this
Yeah.
point and I needed help to fill out and yeah, nothing, just stared blankly at me.
So they wouldn't even consider doing that.
No.
No, yeah. And again, there's a lot of issues around the kind of ignorance that's surrounding this, either willful or yeah, otherwise. And that's a really difficult place to find yourself because, and this is what always kind of crosses my mind is if we're in a situation where we're injured in some other sense, or maybe, for example, I've got quite strong allergies to lots of different medications, so I can't take penicillin, and then there's other ones that I can't take. If I took something like that they prescribed and I came with an allergy that's, accepted, it wouldn't be a problem. It wouldn't be taboo. And it seems to me that the whole vaccine area is so politicized, but very, very, you know, it's really divisive and there's so much taboo around it. So, what do you think about the stigma? Do you think that that's why people are reluctant to even consider it? Do you think that's a lot of the reason why?
I think there's a lot of reasons, I think, to be honest, associated with obviously the stigma and people not wanting to even engage in conversation. I speak very freely about what's happened to me. Um, and when people do ask, the response it's just shut down. There is no response, whether that be a doctor, a friend, a family member, etc. And I'm sure most of us that are in this situation, we're all in the same situation with that. But there needs to be a moment that we do talk about this. Like you said, there's reactions from everything.
Mm.
Everything has a risk.
Yeah.
So why is there now no risk with the COVID-19 vaccine?
Mm. And even if we
Yeah.
consider like how long traditional vaccines take to get through I don't even want to go into my understanding of now. I've looked into them in terms of how they're tested and the safety around all of them. But just generally speaking, they would have had years to study it before it even got to the trial stages. So it seems kind of counterintuitive that we couldn't have a conversation about safety because it was so quick in terms of how they turned
Yeah.
it round. It seems crazy. So yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I think the stigma is something that we need to completely remove. And
Yeah.
I know you'll probably share the same sentiment, but the Channel Islands are unique in that we are really a small community. And
Mhm.
so, do you think that's really impaired your ability to share your story with other people because of how people view and perceive the whole issue around vaccines? And it's more probably shut down locally, conversation wise.
Yeah, I'd say because obviously we're in such a small population, I find it, I suppose, easier to get awareness out there.
Mm.
Whereas somewhere like the UK or France, being as big as it is, it can only go so far. So being in a small community, I do feel that it doesn't take greater awareness than that it does for a bigger country, so to speak.
Mm.
And the help that I have received from the community of Guernsey has been astonishing.
Mm. That's really
And
good.
I didn't really expect it. I stood up and said, right, okay, I'm vaccine injured. I didn't know anyone, and people came out the woodwork, and the
Mm.
support has been sensational. It's been incredible.
That's so lovely to hear, Dan. And do you think that maybe you being kind of confident enough to say what's happened to you, not being afraid of having that, conversation, do you think that's helped other people maybe to feel like they could also do the same? Because that's something we're seeing in Jersey is people are really worried about being the person to stand up and say, this has happened to me.
Do you know what? And I'll be real for a minute. I was more frightened by not engaging with it and not addressing the subject that I already knew.
Mm.
And once I then realized and went, right, okay, and I've come to this fruition and I said, okay, I am vaccine injured. Um, that was for me when the help and the support came out. I
Mm.
was more lonely and being on my own,
Yeah.
ignoring it, than I was honoring in it.
Mm.
And by honoring it, now I'm very proud and I'm just I just want to show people as well that it's not just them.
Yeah. That's the key,
We're
isn't
in
it, really?
yeah, we're in this together, unfortunately, and is there is a beautiful community and a lovely team of people. Yeah, I didn't realize how big the community is for helping vaccine injured and bereaved.
Mm.
There is just it's endless. It really is, and I was blown away, absolutely blown away.
So you've managed to connect, obviously, before anything sort of set up in Guernsey, because I know Joe's been helping you. She's been wonderful there, like with running the support group as well. But you have obviously tapped into like a larger network, and that's obviously been really helpful to you. And one of the things I know you'd spoken to me about is that you were really interested in understanding more about vaccine injury specifically, because it can be so like multifaceted. Have you sort of really got to grips with understanding, because that correlation part's really key, but obviously understanding how it can present and the different things that have managed to help you and what's helped other people. Have you found comfort in that?
Yeah, it's and I people also get comfort in talking about it. I speak to people that might not address it with their loved ones or their friends, and we can do a FaceTime or a Skype session, and they say, "Yeah, okay, I've got this issue." And I said, "Yeah, I've had that as well. I get seizures," and they're like, "No way!" And it's almost like a light bulb moment. And then they really do interact. It almost opens the door for more dialogue and for talking about it. I don't know why we shouldn't talk about it. I really don't understand.
It's so
It's
true.
and for the people that are on the sidelines that help me as well, like Joe and Phil Dupree as well, wrote the book. Um, their support and their determination, even though they're not even vaccine injured, has been absolutely out of this world. I was one man that stood up to form a group, and now we're doing coffee meets, we're doing all sorts, and we're getting out to the community and trying to raise awareness and also offer support where we can.
Yeah, that's so lovely, Dan. And like from my perspective, obviously I've been running the group in Jersey, but it's a bit different because although I can empathize with people, I don't have the experience, the lived experience that you do. I'm coming at it from a completely different angle. Um, Obviously, having lost my dad following the Pfizer vaccine, I understand what it's like to be bereaved and through this process of, wanting to put my energy into something positive, but I can't understand what it's like to walk a mile in somebody's shoes who's had to get up every day not knowing if it's going to be a good day or a bad day. And, I think there was something really key in what you said before, by actually expressing what you're feeling and like owning your truth. I think there's almost like a pathway to healing in even just doing that. I don't know
Mhm.
if you want to touch on that a little
Yeah.
bit more because you've said a lot about your healing and what you've been through, but even just acknowledging it and how that's helped you.
it was, and I love the phrase Dr. Tess Lorry. Sorry. Step away from the fear.
Mm,
As soon as you step away from the fear, everything makes sense. And it might be a confusing subject and it could be a little bit scary to some, or some people might not know. It's the uncertainty, I think, that also
yeah.
makes people nervous about addressing this subject.
Mm,
But believe me, I can't express how much better, not only physically, but mentally as well, that I feel by talking about it and engaging with others. It's the best thing I did. I had two options, Danny. I could sit in bed and I could feel sorry for myself, or I could get up and I can show people that this is possible.
yeah. Now that's really, really important. I think you should never underestimate the impact that you'll have by just taking that step. So not only are you helping yourself in your path to healing and allowing yourself to release that fear, because there is so much fear surrounding it. And that's one of the things that I never really wanted to go down that road because it doesn't help anyone, but being able to talk, connect, and know that you aren't alone is massive. And that's so important. So well done for doing that whilst trying to do your own work and working on your own healing.
I think for myself is that I've never felt so alone in my life while going through that at the beginning. I really didn't. And like I said to you previously, it's every avenue, every door shuts on you. No doctor can work you out. You are, unfortunately, you're on your own. You
Mm,
really are. Um, and it's down to you to get you where you need to be.
yeah,
And believe me, like if you believe in it and you believe in the recovery side, 110% it's possible.
agreed. Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Dan. I really think that. And I think actually, when you take back your own personal power in knowing that's possible, that's when things shift. And I think
Yeah, there was
sometimes,
a word. Sorry.
no, no, go ahead.
There was a word that I really like using now. It's health sovereignty.
Mm,
It's a
yeah,
very good word.
yeah, it's very, very good. And I think that's been the biggest mindset shift I've had probably the last 5 years is, I mean, not that I would say I really outsourced myself to the medical world anyway, but definitely now I'm a lot more sovereign in owning every aspect of my well-being, and I do not outsource, and I research everything now, and I've tried to drum that into my children so that they are able and equipped to ask really good quality questions, because if we can ask better questions we can go and seek out the answers ourselves. So this is a path that I think that we're all kind of on now. And as soon as you open up to that, I think you're right, doors start to open to you that wouldn't have been available before.
There wasn't. And for myself, without speaking about it and engaging with others, the doors that have been opened to me would not have been possible.
Mm,
You've got to speak about this and you've got to engage with others. And as I've said, there is no fear. And yeah, there is a certain aspect of embarrassment. There is, because yeah, we followed government advice and now look. But it isn't about being embarrassed, it isn't
no,
about being angry, it isn't about being fearful. It's about being positive,
yeah,
and approaching your recovery the right way.
yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. And I think you're an amazing advocate for that. I really do. Like I take my hat off to you, seeing your journey, I only really connected with you very recently, but yeah, you've blown me away, Dan. You really have in terms of, your resilience and your positivity. Yeah, maybe there is an element of people feeling duped or shamed, but I don't think they should. I really don't,
No,
because, in all honesty, without going down that road too much, I think, you know, the government did a number on them, and it was the constant messaging, the constant bombarding. So I don't blame anyone. I don't blame anyone,
no.
and I
And there
think
was obviously,
actually, yeah.
go on, sorry.
No, I just think people need to move away from that thought process, and I think there was so much division, and actually it's all forget the division. We need to come back to ourselves, number one, and collectively as a community, as a whole, regardless of what your views are. I don't care if you still think vaccines are great, but what I don't want is you to kind of look down on someone who has been impacted, have some compassion and understanding and empathy, and be open to a conversation that maybe you weren't before. Yeah, everyone's welcome to make whatever decisions they want to in life, but we need to be there
Yeah,
for each other.
100%. And I wouldn't say I'll put myself in the bracket of an anti-vaxxer now.
Mm.
But what interests me is that if someone says to me, okay, I've just got the recent booster, I am polite about my answer. But yet, then if I go to an individual and they ask and they say, oh, okay, what's wrong with you? And I said, oh, I've been harmed by the COVID-19 vaccine, I'm just met with aggression.
Mm.
And it's a
That's
very,
really
very
hard.
weird and difficult situation to be in because it's
Yeah.
always, and it is always the first response. It's always a very sort of look. And that's what we need to open up, I think, to be honest, is like we said, we just need to start talking about this.
Yeah.
Why is it such a taboo?
Exactly. Exactly that. If we just even you could have a whole we could have a whole call on the psychological aspects of being able to talk about a subject that's been put in a category of taboo. Why is it
Mhm.
taboo? Yeah,
Yeah,
we should probably do a session just on that. Yeah, because I think that's the work that we need to do. It's obviously coming together to help each other heal, but also going forwards, it's moving those barriers to having conversations that maybe otherwise people would prefer we didn't. I think that's where we need to go. Wherever they tell you not to, it's kind of like, no, that's where we should be headed.
yeah,
But
yeah. And just you can open up dialogue and talk to people. You can talk to your loved ones about it. If you do believe that the vaccine has caused the decline in your health,
mm,
then why not talk to people about it?
yeah,
I don't understand the subject around it. It's if I had diabetes or fibromyalgia, or I'd get pity. I would.
yeah.
But as soon as you say vaccine injury, it goes the other way.
I know. And you think, well, if there was no such thing as vaccine injury, there never would have been a vaccine injury compensation scheme created ever. So even
Yeah,
though, I mean, that's another conversation in terms of
yeah,
poor structure that's around the compensation scheme. But if they were 100% safe, there wouldn't be a need for any kind of compensation scheme. So
yeah.
that in itself proves to me that it's there's obviously a real potential issue. Like all medicines, you can't have a medicine that, one size fits all and that everybody's going to be okay with. I think we're all inherently different. And
Mhm.
that was probably the biggest issue is that you can't expect a whole collective to all be okay with the same thing. It's just never going to work. It's like you couldn't feed everyone peanut butter. You couldn't feed everyone eggs because there's some people who just could not tolerate that. And it's exactly the same with vaccines, all vaccines.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Well, we've got about 2 minutes left. So maybe we'll wrap this conversation up now, Dan, and
yeah,
then we'll have another one another day. We
yeah.
can
Sounds good.
touch on some more subjects.